Hi everyone, welcome to episode number 9 of the Build podcast, and today we'll be going through package managers. Now I was really excited to do some episodes about other types of building tools which will help us to make awesome web applications and designs, but then I was realizing that I am often using some sort of package manager like npm or rubygems and others to install that first. So what is a package manager? Now if we go to our Mac OS X, there is this application called App Store. It kind of provides an analogy to what a package manager is in a very graphical manner. So a package manager typically will show you a list of packages or applications that you can install through the package manager. Next, it will also show you the apps that are already installed in your system. And lastly, it will even show you the apps that are outdated and that you would need to install it and update it again. Now, of course, a package manager is a command line interface and it can do a lot more as well. So I'm going to introduce you to 4 package managers today that I use very commonly. The first one is npm for Node.js JavaScript environment. Next one is Composer for PHP environment. PIP is for Python, and rubygems is for the Ruby environment. Now before I dive into each of these package managers, let me go through a little concept. System, global, and then local. Now if we are installing a package manager or a package in system-wide, it means that it is available for all the users in our machine. If we are installing it in a global manner, it means that only the current user who has installed the package will get to access it. And if we are installing it in local, it means it is only available for that folder of our project that we are doing. Now for this episode, we'll be dealing with global and some basic concepts about package manager. Now what's the difference between, or rather why would you do it local or globally? Now local is always dependent on a particular project, but sometimes you want to install some packages globally, for example for a text editor or a certain type of preprocessor for your coding. So in this case we'll be using global wide installation. So let's get started with the very first package manager, and that is Node. If we come to the website, we'll see it very well documented with README, FAQ, and even a list of recently used or most downloaded and even most dependent upon packages. I also like the fact that they also put down the developers who are most active. So I highly encourage you to go and create a profile here. Now the next step I want to show you is the download button. When you click download for npm, it will actually lead you to the Node.js website. This is because when you install Node, npm comes along with it. So this is a very easy installer for both Node and npm, and I highly recommend you to do this yourself. Alright, and for npm, we will be installing a package called the Nide text editor. Nide is a very beautiful text editor or an IDE available both as a command line and as a standalone Mac app. And guess what? It needs npm to install it easily. So let's get ahead and install this Nide. But before that, a little bit background on how to check that you have the proper stuff installed before we get started on installing the Nide package. Firstly, we have to ensure that the node is available in our system. So currently the version is 0.8.5. Next, we obviously have to make sure that npm is installed. All right. Right, and after that I like to do which npm. This kind of gives us the path from which the program is fired up. And next, let's dive into npm. Firstly, I'm going to list all the packages that are already installed for this user globally. So that's why I have a -g in it. Alright, so let's see what other packages already installed. And this will kind of give us a tree view. For example, Stylus is installed. npm is installed, obviously. Then we also have the Node build script, and we have Mocha. Notice nide, which comes in between alphabetically between these two, is not yet installed. So let me go ahead and install nide. But just for the purpose of some exploration and experimentation, we will not install the current version of nide. We will install maybe 0.1. The current version of nide is 0.2. So let's get ahead with that. So what I'll do is sudo npm install nide at. So I will use the at symbol to kind of refer which version I'm doing, and then -g to say that, hey, I want to install it globally. Right, so let's install nide. So we see here that nide is installed. I'm just going to run the global list of node packages that are installed just to show you that, hey, nide is now one of them. So previously we saw that there was a node build script, and guess what? There is nide here, and then there is Mocha. It kind of lists them down all alphabetically. So obviously nide is not in the current version. So how do you kind of list down files or packages that are not updated? So to do that, we will do npm-g outdated to kind of list down the packages that are outdated. Sorry, that is not gem. We will do npm. So it will go through all the packages, and at the end it will tell you which ones are outdated. And it has gone through all the packages, and guess what? It correctly points out that nide is an outdated one. So why don't we go ahead and update nide? So to do that, the command will be sudo npm-g update nide. So there you have it, nide 0.2, the latest version has been installed. So now let's get back to the nide side to see how do we actually use it. Usually all package managers will have some kind of documentation that we should be reading. And here it says run nide init. So let's go ahead and do that. Right, so once you do that, it will bring us to the project folder. You can write here the project name and the author name, project description. Skip this test, and there you have it. And you can also create new files here and use the beautiful nide text editor or an IDE. So that was nide and npm. It kind of, I hope it kind of gave you an overview about how it can list the packages that are installed. It can list the packages that are outdated, and you can also update it and see the version, so on and so forth. So now let me quit from the server that's running for the nide text editor. And next we will go on to Composer, which is the PHP Dependency Manager. So Composer also has a very similar website that kind of lists the documentation and getting started, and also browsing packages for Composer. So for Composer, what we should be doing, let me just get into the folder so that, right, and in the folder I have already created something, right, composer.json, which I'll be going through soon. So firstly, we want to make sure that PHP is obviously available. And next, we also want to make sure that Composer is available. All right, before we get started, let me just show you how to install the Composer package manager. So in our show notes, I have already gave some links. And over here, download and install. It has a very clear instruction on how to get Composer installed globally. So you will have to curl in the package, and then you have to rename it, and from this onwards you can actually fire up. So if you see, the version is a number. And what is this number? If you go to Composer, you will in the GitHub repository, you will see that the commit number is actually what I'm getting as the version number. So this kind of shows that 65E95ED is corresponding to the latest commit number. Okay, so I have the composer latest version. So now let's go ahead and also do which composer, because I just like to know which folder it is firing up composer from. Great. So now as you see, composer kind of uses this composer.json file format. So let me just show you that one. So in this case, I'll be trying to install Mustache for PHP. So what is Mustache? Very quickly, let me go back. So very quickly, Mustache is actually a templating language, and it is available for many other programming languages as well. So if you go to the Mustache's parent website, it will show you for many other languages, and we are trying to install Mustache for PHP. And for every composer project, you'll have to create this JSON file that kind of lists the dependency. And after you do this, all you have to do is composer and then install. Notice once you do that, let me just fire up the composer folder. It will start installing the Mustache code here. And composer has installed Mustache here. And if you go to the folder, we will also see they will have a folder called vendor, and inside which there is of course composer as well as the Mustache. And when you come back here, if you want to show whether composer has installed it, you will just do composer show Mustache / Mustache, which is referring to the folder, and it will tell you that, hey, we have the composer package installed, and that is Mustache. Alright, so that was how PHP Package Manager Composer does that globally. And of course, it is a whole different world, and it probably warrants another episode by itself to show how both NPM and Composer can be done in project manner locally. Now let me go on to the next one. So let me just change the folder. And we will go through PIP, which is for Python. Python also has a package manager, and that is PIP most commonly used. And for this, the very first thing we will once again do is, of course, make sure that Python is installed in our system. And we also have to ensure that PIP is installed in our system. Alright, seems like both of them are installed. If you go to the PIP website, it also has a very similar interface. It shows the change log, some common commands. Now by this time you can probably notice the patterns in all the package manager. They typically have the package manager name, and then the command, which is typically install or uninstall, and then they have the package name. You also can go through browse packages to kind of see what are the packages that are installed already. Okay, and similarly I also will run which PIP, because I just want to know which folder is running the PIP program. Next, PIP freeze is the command to show what are the packages that are already installed in our user. For this PIP, we are trying to install Markdown. Now notice Markdown is not yet installed. So why don't we go ahead and install Markdown? So it is very similarly like Composer and NPM, it is just PIP install Markdown. Markdown is not installed because we have to do it with the sudo command. So sudo pip install and then Markdown. Alright, so successfully installed Markdown. There you have it. Now next what we'll be doing is, let's look at a very simple file that I've made, that is test.md, which is for Markdown. And then we will fire off Markdown and see the changes. So the way you do it is markdown_py and then t test.md, and let's run it and see. Right, so there you go. You have the word translated into HTML. Previously, of course, when we tried to say markdown.py, it was saying bash command not found, and now it says, and it executes it into HTML. So that was a gist about what PIP Python Package Manager can do. Lastly, we will go on to the Ruby gems for the Ruby environment. And it is also something very similar. So firstly, we will do is, let me go on to the folder. And we will try to confirm that it has Ruby and also the gem version. Okay, so we both have Ruby and gem here. Next, we will try to also do which gem to see which folder it is firing up the program from. And lastly, we will do gem list to kind of see what are the packages that are already installed. Alright, so over here I have Sass, and that is the package that we want to install. So let me go ahead and fire up the website for Sass. Now Sass is a CSS preprocessor, and as with most packages, they will come with a set of instructions. Now here they said gem install Sass. Now when I go into the documentation, over here it says latest release is 3.1.2, but obviously over here I'm having an older version. So why don't we run gem outdated, which is very similar to the previous example of I believe npm that I showed. Let's see what does gem outdated give us. And immediately it will tell you that Sass is having an older version. It should be having a newer version. So why don't we go ahead and we update it? So I'm going to do gem update Sass. Maybe a sudo will be better. Right, and we see that Sass has now been installed to the latest version. So let's try out Sass now. Now in Sass, which is a preprocessor for CSS, I have prepared a very simple file, which is a Sass file. And let's run this to create the CSS file. So once again, I'll go back here and I'll copy this and I'll run it from here. So we are using the SASS format, and I'm just going to run it. Now notice here, it will immediately create a CSS file. So we have covered 4 different types of package managers that are commonly used, and we have done the global version of them. Obviously, like I said, we will probably need an episode by itself to cover each of them individually on how to use it for our local repository and individual projects. So finally, that's it for this episode. And let me cover the build link for this episode. Build link for this episode is net.tutsplus.com. I love this website. This website has tons of tutorials in the area of web development, design, programming languages, version control, and seriously, they are always churning out very quality tutorials for us to go ahead and learn. And it is done by a very terrific team led by Jeffrey Way. So let me go to the team page, and I highly recommend you to follow their amazing work of whether blogging or development in general as well. So that was NetTutsPlus for the build link this week. And finally, for all your episode of Build Podcast, you can visit build-podcast.com, and you can subscribe it via iTunes or RSS feeds, and even GitHub repository to see the notes or if you have something to contribute to it. So that's it for this episode, and I'll see you in the next episode. Goodbye.